Welcome back to the channel. So we have another interesting problem, which is called find pivot index. And this is a problem that I really like, where you have an array as input. And basically you need to find the index of the element whose elements to the left, when summed, equal the elements to the right when summed. So in this case, the index, the pivot index would be like in this particular scenario, like in this example here, the pivot index is 6 because 5 plus 6 is 11, which is the same as 1 plus 7 plus 3. So the pivot index is at position 3, so 0, 1, 2, 3. So this is the index. You can also have the scenario that there is nothing, there is no such index, and then you need to return -1 when you don't find anything. Or this is an interesting edge case where you have essentially nothing to the left of position 0, and nothing, like empty array will give you the sum of 0, and then to the right it's 1 minus 1, which plus 1 minus 1 is again 0. So the output is 0 here because this is the pivot whose right equals left, right? So it's really a really interesting problem. So how do we do this? Yeah, so there are multiple ways to solve a given problem, and this is what I could find as a solution. If you have another suggestion, please write it in the comments. But yeah, we start with the index 0 and we skip one element, and that being index 0. So here, for example, as we start iterating, this is the first element that we consider, right? To the left of this we have nothing. To the right we have all the rest. So exactly this. So we have bar sum left is 0 because we will always have nothing to the left at the start because we start with index 0. And this is the element that we ignore. So then we have, because we need everything after it actually. Like we need to check, are you the pivot? So var sum right will be nums dot skip 1 dot sum, right? So everything to the right of the current element. And we can actually have this edge case here. Like this is exactly example 3, where to the right you have plus 1 minus 1, which equals 0, equals everything before everything to the left, which is 0. So if the edge case is satisfied, sum left equals sum right, return 0. This is your pivot. And now that we have handled the edge case, we start to iterate. So let me just demonstrate a bit what we are going to do. We have this array, right? We have considered this one. We saw 0 is to the left. It's definitely not 0. So we say that this is not a pivot, right? So now we take the next element. Are you the pivot, right? So to the left we have 1, and 1 does not equal 3 plus 6 plus 5 plus 6. So this is also not. And we keep going. And we keep adding to the left since we started the left at 0. And we keep decreasing elements one by one and swapping them to the left. And at some point, we will find the pivot. It's a pretty cool exercise. So let's do this. So now we just start the iteration. But no, we start the iteration at position 1. Why? Because we have already handled the scenario where we have already double checked the position 0, and it was not the pivot, because if it was the pivot it would return here. So now we are not interested in starting at 0 anymore, so we start at 1. So since we keep swapping values, sum left will be always the previous sum left plus the element to the left. What does that mean? When we double check this, if it's the pivot, we are going to say, okay, sum left is always previous sum left plus the element before it. And sum right is always going to be the previous sum to the right minus the current element because we are reaching it. So to the left we add the previous one, which is nums of I minus 1. And to the right is sum right minus nums of I, the current one, right? We keep swapping the value and pushing it to the left. This can also be written in short form as minus equals nums of I, and since this is also handle sum left, plus equals nums of I minus 1, right? At some point we will reach our pivot when we keep doing these swaps. So if we have the exact same check, if you have reached the pivot, then return the index. We just break the loop. We're not interested in continuing. There is also the scenario that if no such index exists, return -1. So as we do this iteration, we can have this surprise that we have found nothing. So then we return nothing, which is -1. Well, let's see. Let's see how it works. It works with the first scenario. Let's check with the edge case, where we discussed that we have an edge case where position 0 is our pivot because 1 minus 1 is 0, which equals what's to the left, which is also 0. So if we go into the test case and replace the test case with the edge case, run code, this also works. Output was 0 and the expected was 0. That one was exactly this one here, which we handled. Okay, let's submit this. Cool. I would say that looking at this, the time complexity would be O of n, and this is because you might have to traverse the entire nums array in order to find your pivot. Like the pivot might be actually the last element. Time complexity is O of n. Yeah, thank you, and I'll see you in the next video for the next Leetcode exercise. Ciao.